G'day guys, Socket here. Today we're going to cover the topic of rear fill. Now this is something that people have been requesting for quite a while, and so I'm just going to cover that off today. We're going to look at both standard and differential rear fill. We're going to look at how to set that up in the DSP and actually how to take the measures and all of that type of stuff using REW. So we're going to go right into depth on how to set up your rear fill speakers. So let's get on in and have a look at rear fill. So what exactly is rear fill? Well, rear fill is to do with the rear speakers in the car and how they play. And there are two different types of rear fill. There is what they call standard rear fill and differential rear fill. Now, standard rear fill is where you just have the normal left and right speakers playing, and it's just like your front stage, but it's playing at the back of the car, and it's generally used when you have passengers in the back and you want them to be able to enjoy the music as well. Or you just want, some people don't like the sound stage being at the front of the car, like you're watching a concert or something. They preferred the sound to be sort of all around them in a 3D surround, and that's the time where you would use something like standard rear fill to give them, put them in the middle of the music, so to speak. And then the second type is called differential rear fill, and that is a very special way of using your rear speakers to basically mimic natural reflections in the car, add space and room ambience without mucking up your front stage. So how does this rear fill effect work? Well, the effect is created by sending a mono out-of-phase signal to the rear speakers. The mono signal is created by configuring the input-output settings in the signal chain in the DSP so that the front, left and right signal is subtracted from each other, and the resulting cancellation cancels out the center information in the channel, such as the vocals. So what you end up with is a signal that sounds like an echo or a reflection in a large room when the speakers are properly delayed. So if that all sounds like gibberish to you, just hang in there guys, it'll all make sense soon. So I guess the big question is, do you need differential rear fill? And I guess the answer to that is quite subjective. Look, I drove my car around for a long time without differential rear fill, and I perfectly enjoyed my music. It's the type of thing that is very subtle, but once you've had a tune with differential rear fill, you really notice it when it's turned off. The best way that I can describe it is it kind of creates a more of a 3D image to your soundstage, and provides a lot more, ambience and detail to the soundstage. And when you turn it off, things kind of sound a little bit flat. So like I said, it's very subtle. You really can tell the difference when you turn it on and off. But if you ask somebody, is my differential rear fill on or off, if they just jump in your car, they would really struggle to answer that question. I personally like my tune with the differential rear fill, and I certainly probably wouldn't go back just because of the ambience that it creates and the detail that I get from from the soundstage. But that said, it needs to be tuned properly. Otherwise, it can actually cause a lot of problems with your front shade smearing and things. So let's talk about some of the things that you need to consider when you're doing a differential rear fill tune. Okay, so if you've decided that you're going to go ahead with differential rear fill, here are some tips that I will give you. First of all, you want your rear speakers to play from about 250 through to probably as high as they can play. Now that means that wideband speakers make great candidates for differential rear fill speakers. But if you've already got rear speakers and you don't want to upgrade, as long as your speakers can play from about 250 through to about 5,000, you'll still get the effect, no problem, and everything will be fine. The second tip I'll give you is that don't be tempted to drop your frequency range too low and into the bass notes You don't want to go really below about 200 Hertz if you can avoid it. The reason for that is bass doesn't work particularly well with the differential rear fill. Standard rear fill, no problem, but with differential rear fill it causes comb filtering and delays and all types of smearing of the front stage and stuff, and you don't really want that. So keep your the lowest frequency of your rear fills above 200 Hertz and you should be fine. The third tip is really about getting the effect right, and that has a lot to do with the way you set your levels of your rear speakers. So if you set them too low, obviously you won't get enough of an effect to have an impact, and if you set them too high, then the rear speakers are going to become obvious and they're going to interfere with your front stage. So finding that sweet spot is really important and is easy to get wrong, but we'll cover that off when we get to the tuning stage. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is speaker locations. So there are three common speaker locations, either in the rear door cards or the rear doors, up on the parcel shelf, or in the C-pillars. And the ideal location for differential rear fill is in the C-pillars, so that you've got a direct line of sight between the speakers and the listening position in the driver's seat, for example. But not everybody wants to create custom pillars and cut up their car. So, using OEM locations in the door cards or in the rear pillars, in the rear parcel shelf is perfectly fine. You'll still get the same effect. So that's all great background information, but how do you actually do a standard and differential rear fill tune? Well, let me walk you through the steps that I use when I do rear fill, and then we'll head out to the car and I'll do a quick demo. With the standard rear fill process first, because that's the easiest. So like all tunes, I start by measuring the speakers in full range first with no crossovers or anything, just so I can see how the speakers are responding. And then I go and set the crossovers. Now, as I said, for the high pass crossover, I don't tend to set it any lower than 200 Hertz. 250 is normally where I put the that crossover. And on the low pass, I let the speaker generally play as high as they can, just putting a bypass in on the low pass crossover. But if it's super messy at the top end or it's falling off, well below 10,000 Hertz or something like that, then I will sometimes put a 5,000 Hertz crossover in, with a maybe 12 dB slope or something like that, something nice and gentle. But if you get away with it, you don't really need a low pass crossover. Next, we need to pick a target line or target level that we're going to create our house curves and EQ against. So once again, you want to sort of pick a line of best fit that is a good compromise between the dips and the peaks without cutting out too much of the level so that you lose all your dynamics and things like that. Whatever that happens to be, it depends on your measurement levels and a whole bunch of things, but let's pretend for the moment that we've got a target level of 60. So then we would want to go and create a house curve so that we can, we have a framework to shape the response of the speakers against. You want the target level to be the same for both your left and right, and to be using the same house curve for your left and right rear speakers. And you just go into the Room EQ tool, into the EQ tool, and create a house curve that suits you best. Once again, we're not too worried about crossovers and things, so. But with Butterworth or a Linkwitz Riley, 24 dB slope is usually fine. Then you do your EQ work, so I think we've covered that in previous tutorials. So you EQ your speakers to their house curves, use as many or as few EQ bands as you need to get a good speaker response. Now next, before you start your time alignment, just check the polarity of your speakers. So you will have left going to your left rear and right going to your right rear. Just sort of sit in the middle of the car, flip the polarity back and forth, and see when the polarity, when the speakers sort of playing roughly from the right and left, and when they're kind of in the center, when they're in the center, you know that the polarity is right. And then the last thing you need to do is, I guess, sort of time align them. So once again, we're time aligning a speaker pair, so you're looking for when the sound is the most loudest or sums up the best. Now for re-speakers, they're exactly the same as doing tweeters or mids or any other speakers that we've timed aligned using the moving mic method. You're just looking for maximum summation. If you're using a sweep method, then you're going to time align them using phase or impulse. So standard time align process, and then finally you're going to set your rear field volumes. It really depends on the effect that you want. You just raise or drop your levels according to your own tastes and how far you want the rear speakers to pull back the front stage. And that's kind of about it. I personally don't like the standard rear fill kind of effect. I much prefer, the stage to be in front of me, like I'm sitting at a concert or at a, watching a band, and I don't typically expect the music coming from behind me. But there are people that like that style, and and I say, good for you. And if that's the way you like, then this is the way you would do your tune. The second method is then the differential refill. And the way we do that is largely the same, with the exception of, in this case, steps 8 and 9, where we need to change some of the input-output settings in the DSP and add some delay to the front stage. So measure the speakers, set the crossovers, pick your target lines, all of those things all the way through to time aligning your speakers is going to be very much the same. So for steps 1 through to 7, you're going to want your left front signal going to your left rear and your right front signal going to your right rear. And once you've finished all your time alignment, we then need to jump into the DSP, into your input-output sections, and switch all your inputs to differential rear fill settings. So let's go and have a look at that. So when you're doing standard rear fill, you're going to have the front left signal just going to the left and the front right signal going to the right rear, and your polarity will be the same. When you're doing differential rear fill, you're going to have the left and right front signal going to your rear left, but your front left signal is going to have its polarity normal, and your front right signal is going to have its polarity inverted. So you've got 50% left, 50% right, normal polarity on your left, negative polarity, inverted polarity or negative polarity on your right hand side, and that's for your left hand speaker. So normal polarity on your left. On your rear right, you're going to have the mirror image. So you're going to have the same split of front left and right going to the rear right speaker, but you're going to have your right speakers now going to have the normal polarity, and your left speaker will be inverted. Now the last thing is around polarity. So you can either have the polarity the same or the polarity flipped. I've seen some people flip the polarity on this. I seem to think personally that with the polarity the same, the effect works better. I feel like if you flip the polarity, you kind of undo some of this stuff that you're doing over here. But horses for courses. Certainly the way I do it is I leave the polarity the same. But when you're doing your final by ear sort of tuning, you can flip this back and forth when you've got your differential dialed in, and just see, well, which one seems to give you the best effect. And like I said, for me, I tend to leave the polarity the same. It seems to be the one that works for me, but certainly give it a go. So let me show you how to set this up in the DSP. I'm going to do it in two flavors. The first one is just vanilla DSP with no virtual channel processing. And then I'll do a second version that if you are using a Helix DSP with virtual channel processing, how you might go about setting that up. So in both cases, we want to go into the input-output configuration. This is where you have your inputs and your outputs. First of all, if you're going to set up your rear fill, you're going to have to select these, the channels that you're going to put it on. So in my case, I'm going to make that output G and H. So I would then, first of all, find a little name for my rear fills. So rear fill left and rear fill right. There we are. Okay, so now I have my refills put on, labels put on channel G and H, and now I've got my analog, my Bluetooth, and my digital, and I've got everything blanked out. Normally you would have, you know, some sort of inputs on your tweeters and your mids and your mid bass and stuff, but just to make this nice and clear, so here we have my rears on G and H. So the first thing I want to do is add both left and right channel to both of those. Okay, so I now have a signal going to the rear left that is 50% left, 50% right, and to my rear right speaker a 50% left, 50% right, so exactly the same. So for differential refill, for standard refill, it would just look like, whoops, standard refill, it would just look like this. I'd be just sending my front left signal to my rear and my right signal to my right rear. But in differential refill, we're going to add both left and right, half and half, right? And to make it differential, to give it that mono signal without the center information, we're going to flip the polarity by double clicking and then click invert polarity, and that then makes the front right signal negative or inverted, and then we're going to do the same on the other, right? So if you want to remember how that works, the polarity, which is normal, goes to the left to left and right to right, and the other one is flipped. So we end up with a signal that is a mirror image going to the left and right. So just to run through that quickly again, using the Bluetooth setting, because you'll need to do this in each of your input types. So we've just done the head unit. We now need to do the Bluetooth signal. So there's my left and right on G and H. So if I was doing standard refill, I just go left and right and I'm done. If I want to do differential refill, then I'm going to go left, right, and then I'm going to flip the polarity on that one and flip the polarity on that one. So you double click and you can just click on the polarity inversion, right? And so that's the Bluetooth done, and we also need to do it on the digital. So G, try again. So standard and then differential, right? Double click, and that's kind of it. That's now set up. Now, if you are doing it in virtual channel mode, I'll just run quickly through how you do that. Now, if you're lucky enough to have a Helix DSP, one of the newer models that has virtual channel processing, then I'll show you quickly how to set the differential refill up in that. So here are your inputs, here are your outputs, and you'll notice that on the virtual channel outputs, they have, some of these channels have these little subtext, right, which are special features associated with a particular virtual channel. So you'll notice here that we have rear ATT, which means rear attenuation. That means that virtual channels C and D have the ability to use the knob on the conductor or the director to control the rear attenuation. So here is left. Now I can put whatever label I like on that, right? I can call it line 5 out if I like. It doesn't really matter what I call it, it's still going to, the volume level controller for the rear speakers is still going to be associated with virtual channel C. So let me change that back to rear left. And you can see some of these others have the same sort of subtext. So virtual channel E has a center effect, and the subs have a sub remote control and a sub effect. So when you go into the FX menu, you can put on things like dynamic bass enhancement and other things. But what we're interested in is making sure that when we do our refills, that we're putting our differential refill onto virtual channel C and D and not on something else, because otherwise you won't have the remote control functionality. Alright, so just like before, we'll start off with the main or the head unit, and we'll put on left, right, let's start again, left and right. So that would be standard refill mode, right? Left going to left and right going to right. But if you want to do differential refill, we're going to put left and right on both, and we're going to invert the polarity on the left speaker, and then invert the left on the right speaker, and bang, that's differential refill applied to our virtual channel C and D for our analog head unit. But we also need to do it for the other channels, other inputs, which will be our Bluetooth. Okay, so just do that one, and that one's done for the Bluetooth, and then we have our digital, right? So make sure I'm putting him on the right one. I am not. Is that right? Left? Yep. It's quite easy to, get out of. It's fine, it's fine. So we're all on the right levels, good. There we go. Alright, so now we have all of our inputs linked to our virtual channels, and they're on the correct ones, C and D. Now when we go to virtual output routing, here are all your speakers. So my speakers are actually on outputs G and H. So if I go to, over here, there's my rear fills, right? So I want to connect my virtual channel C to my left refill, okay, and my virtual channel D to my right refill. Okay, so that means regardless of whether I'm playing my analog or my digital or my hex, they're all going to virtual channel C and D, and virtual channel C and D is running to my oops, what's happened there? Virtual channel output. Something screwy went on there. So anyway, back, we'll try that again. So virtual channel C and virtual channel D. Oh, okay, so what it's doing is reverting back to the naming that I'm using there. That's fine. You can see, as long as we grab those two virtual channels and we put them on left and right, that's the way it works. And that means when we go up into your virtual channels, we should be able to see, here they are. Okay, so we should be able to see that here we have rear left, rear right on virtual channel C and D. You'll notice here that it's saying rear volume control is deactivated, and I think that's because you've got to go into the DMC area, change your extended features, put on your your conductor or whatever you're using, and then set up your rear attenuation. Give it a color, something like, I don't know, purple, so you don't mix it up with your sub or your master volume, and activate it under your conductor or director or whatever you're using. And there's a tutorial on that somewhere in my channel. And so once that's done and you've actually got the car turned on, I'm pretty sure that that then shows up as activated or something like that. Anyway, that's the way that you deal with setting up the Helix with the virtual channels, and how to set up your director or conductor so that you've got your rear attenuation connected up to your rear speakers. Okay, with that out of the way, I think it's time to go out to the car and do a quick demo. Now, I'm only going to demonstrate the differential rear fill method. I think that's the one that most people are interested in understanding how to do. So let's head out to the car and dive in. G'day guys, miserable day here in Melbourne today, but to be fair it's the middle of winter so I can't complain. We're going to do the rear fill video today, just the demonstration, and I just wanted to show you where these rear fill speakers were. So we're here in the Audi A1, so one on this side and one, there we go, one on that side, and they're probably about a meter and a little bit away from the driver's position. Yeah, so they're, I'm not even sure what type of speakers they are, to be honest, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. So I'll get into the demo now, and let's see how they turn out. Alright guys, we're going to start doing the work on the rear fill in the little Audi A1. So we're all set up to take the measurements, and like all speakers we're going to start initially with the full range measures. So I'm going to just mute everything, make sure nothing else is on. Come on, nope, nothing else is on, everything's muted, that's great. And we're going to start with the left rear fill, which is the channel G. Now before we do that we want this to be in full range. I'm using wideband speakers, so they're perfectly okay to play in full range. So I'm just going to bypass the low end there and do the same on the other one, like that. If you're using coax, or you're using a rear fill that has an independent tweeter or something like that, where you've got a driver that can be damaged by bass notes like a tweeter or something like that, be very, very careful. Make sure that you put in a protective crossover, as we've covered in the tutorials, and keep the volume relatively low. And when I mean by relatively low, you don't want it above 90 dB or anything like that. You could damage your speakers, so take care. The next thing we just want to check is in your I/O that you've got your left channel going to your left rear and your right channel going to your right rear. If you've been playing around with differential before and you have your differential signals already set up in here, it's not going to work. So you want that set up for for standard rear fill mode to start with. I'm using my phone to Bluetooth the signal to the DSP, so I'm working in my hex module. If you're using your head unit, you would want to do the same in your main input, and so you would take your left channel to your left rear fill and your right channel to your right rear fill. And if you're working in digital, as some of us do, it would be left digital and right digital. And on your output side, if you're using virtual channels, let's see, where am I? We want the left, no, we want our rear channels. Where are we? Left rear and left rear, like that. Okay, so I think that's all set up, so I think we can start doing some measurements. So we're now in REW. We're going to open up our RTA window, just check the settings quickly. So 148, no smoothing, 64 forever, stop at is ticked with 105 measurements, Han window 87.5, they look fine, so we can close the settings tab again, and we can blow this up so you guys can see what's going on. So with the left rear selected, we're going to start our uncorrelated pink noise and start our measurements, and straight away I can tell that that's not going to work because we're way down here at 40, and I can hear the measurement level is very soft. So let's go see what's going on. Is it turned down in the DSP? No, the gains are at 0, so that shouldn't be a problem. The head unit is turned up to about 3/4 of its maximum volume. I could turn it up a bit more. Yeah, it goes a bit louder. You don't want to max out your volume because most head units will clip at as they approach their maximum volume, so you don't want to do that. I know what it is. So in my director I have my rear fill connected to a separate volume knob, And there we go. Now I'm getting some volume. Alright. That sounds better. Okay, so you want to, as I said, as always, you want a measurement signal that's loud enough to get out of the floor noise. So now that we have that sorted, we can go back into REW, grab the trusty U mic and back into the RTA, and let's see if we can get a proper measure. Alright, so let's start the pink noise and we'll grab a quick measure. Okay, we have our two measures now, so let's have a look at how they turned out. So I always label them first if I can. Left rear, oh dear me, left rear full range, and right rear full range. Okay, and so I want to smooth those, so 1/6 smoothing as always, and let's see what we have. So we have the left rear in red and the right rear in green, and they seem to be responding pretty well. Remember, this is in full range, no crossovers or anything like that. So yeah, okay, they're rolling off around about, what's that, there's a big peaky peak thing going on, but you know, they're pretty functional all the way up to 394, something like that, 400. Probably not a bad place to roll them off, about 400, 350, something like that. And then of course we can EQ it all the way through, you know, through this region here, you know, maybe down here, but oops, but they're playing together pretty well, right? All the way up to about 17,000 K. So yeah, all right. That looks pretty handy, and so that is our full range measures done. So we're going to move on and now do the crossovers. So, you know, as I said, I think, you know, if we're going to sort of EQ down to here, I think I'm going to put a crossover in, I'm not sure, try to avoid this stuff here. So maybe come back, maybe come back, I'm going to put a crossover in at 400. That's just me. So let's see, we need to go into the DSP and on the left rear take off the bypass, yes, apply the new one, thank you, and put in a crossover of 400. That's that one, and same on the rear, that's that one, and let's take another measure, see how they look. So back into REW, into the RTA, blow that up, start with the left rear with the crossover at 400, yeah, 400 and 400, just double check this, oops, wrong one, yep, there's no mistakes, that's awesome. Alright, so let's take another measurement, starting our pink noise. Alright, so we've now got those two measures done. This will be the left rear crossover and right rear crossover. Excellent, and some smoothing, thank you very much. And yeah, those measurements, not identical, but because, yeah, not sure why. Not too far off, but they should really sort of overlap each other. So I'll just quickly pop in here, make sure there is no time alignment or anything set for these speakers. So G and H, no there isn't, so okay, doesn't matter, we'll move on, push on. Alright, so we can turn off the full range now. So we now have our left and right with the crossovers in. If I bring up just this one here, you can see that we're trying to avoid this messy area here, which we have, which is great. Okay, so our next thing we're going to do is pick our target line. So we sort of want to run, you know, like as we always do, we want to sort of run a line, you know, where we cut out some peaky stuff and you know, somewhere through the center. So you know, that kind of looks about right there, you know, about gosh, 50, maybe 53. It's going to get rid of all this peaky stuff that's going on. So 53 I think is probably going to work. Alright, so let's create a house curve by going into the EQ window. So I'm going to start remembering that you need to select a measure over here if you're going to use any of these tools. It will only work with whichever measure that you've got selected, so I'm going to use the rear XO. It doesn't really matter when we're fitting house curves, to be honest, but okie dokes, so let's play that up. So we just shut this one down here, so we've got more room. I like to see what I'm doing down here, so the first thing I always do is set this from 20 to 20,000, so whoops, 20,000, like that, and now I can see everything properly. And we're going to go into target settings, and what did we say our house curve was going to be? 53. I'm going to make it, actually no, I'm going to make it 54. What the hell. Alright, sorry about all the confusion, folks. Alright, so back to here. So my target level, first of all, needs to be 54 before I forget that. We don't need any base rise or any of that type of stuff because we're working on rear fills, and we don't need any high frequency cuts because we're working on rear fills. Okay, so we're going to need basically a massive tweeter-like curve. So we're going to turn that one off so it's running all the way to 20,000. Talking about that, I will select 20 to 20,000 so we can see the whole curve, and so there's the target line. Now we want it to be, well, you can pick whatever slope you like, but I'm going to use an LR4 or liquid trial 4, and my crossover is at 400. So that kind of looks like that, and we're just checking how that's matching the slope. Maybe you could make it a little steeper. We'll try an LR liquid Riley 2. See how that looks. No, oh sorry, that's not steeper, that's or shallow. Okay, maybe an LR6. That's going to follow the curve a bit, you know, because we're not worried about crossovers and summation and that type of thing. So it's just going to make it a lot easier to EQ than, you know, doing something like this and having to push this end out and all that stuff. You know, we're just going to have a really sharp drop off. But you know, suit yourselves. You pick whatever slope that you like. Okay, so I'm going to use that as my house curve. Generate measurement from targets, and that will pop my house curve down the bottom here, and this will be my rear house curve. Awesome. And there it is in green. As always, I like to turn that black so I can see it. And that's what we're going to use to EQ against both of our speakers. Okie dokie, so let's start with the left rear, and let's do some EQ work. So we have that already set up. We want to run our range from about 200 through to 20,000, as high as we can go, so we can sort of shut that, open up our filter task, 20 to 20,000, 6, 6 and 1. We can just hit match response to target. Yep, okay. And that doesn't look fantastic just by looking at it. Because I set match range at 20, not 200. Good one, socket. Let's try that again. Alright, now that looks a bit better. Okay, so now here is the predicted line in blue, so that looks pretty good. I'm going to go with that. And we've used 20 filters, so happy days. Alright, so once again, we'll go into the DSP, make sure we have the correct speaker selected. In this case, we're doing the left rear, so that looks fantastic. Back into EQ, up into this EQ filter button. We're going to click on the double white page. Over here we should have a window saying, do you want to import? And the answer is yes, we do. And we go OK, and boom, there is our left rear done. well, EQ'd anyway. So that one's done. Let's go do the right. Okay, so we can close that, go into REW, and then we go into the right rear EQ tab. Now we need to set up the house curve so we can EQ the speaker against it, so here we have to do all this again. You could set this up in the preferences so you don't have to do it every time. I think we're using an LR6 slope this time, and our thing is 400, crossover is 400. Our target curve is 54 from memory. Now if you want to check that, you can just go back into your other measurement, because it'll all be saved there still, and you can just check what the target level is. So it is 54. You don't really want to have house curves with different levels. You can imagine how that's going to turn out. You'll end up with one speaker higher than the other, and nobody wants that. We don't need that on. Alright, so now we have our house curve set up. We can minimize that, open up our filter tasks. I want to run from 200 to 20,000, which is all set up. You can hit match response to target, and while my computer works that out, we can go and make a cup of coffee. And there we have it. We've got, yeah, it hasn't really smoothed that bit out. Probably a bit too much for REW to deal with. We've got a bunch of filters up here. And so this is one of these situations where I think we've used the whole 20. Yep. So we've used everything up. So we need to free up a filter from somewhere to allow us to sort of try to deal with this little thingy thing going on over here. So the way to probably do this is reset filters for current measurement. So I'm just going to start again, right? So okay, we've got back to our blank page, and we really just want to push this out just a fraction, right? So just like setting crossovers for any other speaker, we can change the slope, we can do a few things. I think in this case I'm just going to use a little PK filter here to start with, or a EQ filter. So let's go into the filter page, just going to slide that over there, and we're going to use, it doesn't really matter which one, but let's use number 1. Come on, there we go. Alright, so I select a PK filter. The frequency is, what is it, 364, something like that, 364. Initially I'm going to, so I want a very broad filter because I want to push this whole slope out. So I'm going to have a Q of 1, and let's start with a 4 dB push. Just going to turn that off for a second so I can see what's going on over here. That's not quite enough, so let's go for a 6. That's still not quite enough. Maybe if we just change the frequency a little bit, let's say 400. Has that helped? Not really. So let's go back to 360. Well, that's closer, but I think when we EQ, it's going to pull this back a little bit. So I think what I'm going to do is also just drop the crossover slope just a fraction. So it looks like we're going to have to do another measure. And that's okay. Just bear with me. Bear with me, guys. This is all part of the fun. So it's on the right rear. Let's change this crossover slope to, I don't know, let's try 300. Let's do that. Let's take another quick measure. So we can close that out, and we'll go into our RTA again. Let's do a very quick measure and see if we can fix that little problem, right? Alright, so we've got that measure retaken. Let's call that right rear, and that's going to be crossover 300, right? We can smooth that out, and let's have a little look. So we want to get rid of the left so we can see what's going on here. And let's get rid of the house curve just for a second. So you can see the original measurement in orange and now the original measurement in blue. It hasn't really moved that crossover very much. If I put the house curve back on it, you can see that the difference is that, you know, there's less of it in this area than before, but we've pushed the crossover out 100 Hertz. So now we might be able to EQ it with a little EQ filter. So let's go give that a go. Unfortunately, we have to go set everything up again, so I'll do that really quickly. None LR6 400. We want none of that, and we want 54. Boom. Alright, so it's not far off, which is great. Let's go into our EQ filters, put a PK filter at 364, 60B, and a 1. Right, now let's see how that's worked. That is certainly got it out of the problem area, but I think it's going to potentially dip down a little bit when we do the EQ work. Let's find out. Alright, so let's collapse that. Go into filter tasks, 200 to 200 Hertz, which looks about right. Yep, 20,000, blah blah blah. Match response to target. Yes, let's see how we go. And you can see straight away that this dip, so when you EQ, it pulls everything, the whole curve back in towards the line. And that dip has appeared on this side of the line again, which is a shame. Oh, you know what I should have done? I'm a bit silly. I know why that's happened. Okay, so guys, I'm really sorry about this, but this is part of tuning. I'm going to reset everything to none, and I'm going to try again. I think I know what I did wrong. So PK 364. I want a 6 dB, and we want 1. Right, that's going to push it outside the curve. And now see this little marker here that says auto EQ. I need to untick that, otherwise when the EQ runs it's going to overwrite that setting. So what happened was, when we just did that last pass, what it did was it overwrited the PK, the EQ filter I just put in to push that out, and of course it came back in again. So let's see what happens when we do it this time with nope, it's still done it. Okay, but it's less. So yeah, let's just have a look at what we end up with. Yep, that really hasn't helped. So okay, I thought I knew what the problem was. That PK filter is still there. Actually, where has it moved? Here it is. It's on number 4. I'm thinking, geez, what's going on here? It's 200. But there it is. It's put it into sort of frequency order, for want of a better term. So there it is. Okay, so we spent way too much time EQing this speaker. You can go and sort that out. If you were doing your own system, you'd spend a bit more time. But let's move on. So let's take both of these speakers as EQ'd. So of course our next step is to measure those. So let's go and do that. Alright, the next thing we need to do is put these EQ filters in on the right rear. So with the right rear selected, we go into here, we find the little white double paged icon, which is this one, and over here we can now turn that off. Click OK, and there we are. So now we have the EQ settings for the right rear, the EQ settings for the left rear, and there is our 364 PK filter that we entered in, so that's good, that's still there. Alright, so let's go measure these speakers. We're going to start with the left one first. Okay, so we've got both of those measurements done. Let's give them a bit of smoothing. Ka-ching. And then the first one is the left rear EQ'd, and the second one is the right rear EQ'd. Good. Alright, so we can turn off these other measures, the crossover ones. And here we have them. We, of course, REW likes to play games with the colours, so here we are. So they're running along here. We've got that little bit of a dip that we saw before on the right hand side, but you know, is what it is. They're following each other pretty well along the house curve, so if I turn them off, you know, that's a pretty good response. I'm pretty happy with it. Maybe a dB here and there, but you know, I could play around and fiddle around if you really want to get that dead straight, but yeah, that's for demonstration purposes. I think that looks fine. So that is that piece done. So the next thing we're going to move on to is time alignment, starting with just checking the polarity. So the first thing we will do is just move and switch to correlated pink noise, because we want the pink noise coming from both speakers to be the same, and then we're just going to check that, you know, it's the sound is not splitting, right? So it's coming from the sounds like you'll hear sound everywhere, but the concentration of the sound should be kind of in the middle behind you, not sort of coming from different sides of the car. So we'll just quickly do that. So we'll need correlated pink noise, as I said, and we'll need both speakers turned on. So that's in my case G and H. And I'm just going to use the left speaker to be able to flip the polarity, because if you cycle through the polarity, you'll be able to hear, you know, it in two different states. So they're both set for polarity normal, and I'm just going to sort of flick it on and off like that to see, you know, if I can figure out when it's in polarity, when it's not. So let me just play some correlated pink noise, and let's do the polarity check, right? Yeah, so I'm not sure if you could hear that over the microphone, but certainly when the polarity is normal on both, it sounds like it's coming from the center. So that the polarity checks out, that's fine. Fantastic. Well, that's the polarity checked, and now we're going to move on to time alignment. So I measured the left and right rear speaker to the listening position before using the tape measure method. The left is 118 centimeters away and the right is 87 centimeters away. That means that the right is the closest speaker and is the speaker that needs to be delayed. So we don't need to put any delay on the left, but we do need to measure the difference between the two. So 118 minus 87 is 31 centimeters, and if I now convert that to milliseconds so we can put it into the DSP, I take 31 centimeters and I divide it by 34.3, which is the speed of sound, or sorry, the distance that the speed of sound covers in 1 millisecond, or 34.3 centimeters. So that gives me a delay of 0.91 milliseconds to add to the right rear. So that's this one down here. 99, 91. Perfect. So now we can play some correlated pink noise and just time align the speakers by ear. And so we'll play some pink noise now, and I'm just going to add delay or take delay off this rear speaker, and you'll hear pink noise sort of playing around in the back of the car. When it's, you know, it's most concentrated in the sort of middle of the back, that's where the two speakers are time aligned. So let's do that. Let's measure that. Okay, well that sounds about right. So awesome. So let's go and measure the sum of those two. So we'll just make sure both of the speakers are on, which they are, and let's go and take another measurement of those and just see how they're summing up. Okay, that looks okay, so let me change the colour. Once again, REW likes to mock me with its colour selection. So 1/6 smoothing, and boom, there we go. It's summing up all the way through here. Yeah, okay, not so great here at 400, but I'm not. It's I'm probably not going to get much better than that. So here it is. Let's say 54 along our target line, and it's summing up to 57.5 at 2000 hertz, 3000 hertz. So 3.5 dB at the very high frequency range. Once again, you could fiddle around with this and try to get it to sum a bit better. You could add a little bit of delay and take a measure to see until you get the maximum summation that you think you desire. But for demonstration purposes, I think that's fine. So I'm going to make this the rear sums, and I really don't like that colour. I get obsessed by colours here in REW, right? Okay, now I can see it a bit better. Alright, so I think that's now time aligned. The next thing we need to do is go into the DSP. So we just need to switch out of standard rear fill and into differential rear fill. So here we are in the analog. So we're just going to slide left and right, and then change the polarity. Change the polarity on this one. So that's the main done on our left and right. We do the same to our we do the same on our Bluetooth. Oops, wrong one. There we go, left and right, double click, and hit the invert polarity button. So that's the Bluetooth done, and now the digital. I think we went through this in a bit of detail before, so I'm rushing through it again. And then just on our virtual outputs, so I got my tweeters, my mids, my mid bass, my rears. These are my front fills, which I'm not using in this tutorial, and then I have my front and rear subwoofers. So we got front left and right, front left and right, front left and right, and then rear left and right, which lines up with the rear left and right naming convention over here. So a bit like we covered earlier in the tutorial. So everything's set up, we can now move to the next step. The next thing that we need to do is add on some extra delay for the rear fill effect. So the way that this works is you hear these echoes and reflections, sort of like when they're 18 or 20 milliseconds, something like that, delayed from the front stage. So if we use the front mid, and that's at 1.58 milliseconds for the right mid, the closest one, and we're at 0.92 down here. That means that we need to add on 18 milliseconds to that, or whatever. So 18 milliseconds on top of 1.58. So 18 plus 1.58 would be 19.58. So we're going to slide this all the way through to 19.58. And you've got to be careful, because if you hit one of these end bumps, it will, even though things are grouped, it will muck up the relationship between the two. So 19.58. Oops, there we go. Alright, so that seems like a lot of delay, but that's what creates the effect. Alright, with that dialed in, I think the next thing that we need to do is just set up the volume. So let's have a bit of a listen. So what we're looking for here is you want to have your rear fill volume at a level where it's not obvious that the sound is coming from the back. If you can hear the music being pulled to the back, then you just drop your volume until it kind of disappears. If you go too low, you won't get any effect at all. So it's just a matter of fine tuning and finding that nice sweet spot. So I'm going to start playing some pink noise, some music, and just see whether I can hear the effect and play around with the volume levels. So I'll be right back. Okay, so that's all done. Unfortunately, I can't show you that piece of the clip because it will trigger a copyright problem with the with YouTube. But all I did was played some music. It was a little bit high, dropped the volume down on the rear fills. Now I've got my DSP set up for the volume control here in the DCM. Now where is it again? Here it is, down here on volume 3. Here it is, rear attenuation. So I've got that sort of set up in my conductor. If you don't have that and you don't have any way of controlling the your rear fills, then you can do it here with your gain levels up and down. Unfortunately, you can only sort of go up to 5 dB, but generally you'll tend to find that your channel gain needs to be down around about the -6, -7 mark is a good place to try to start. So if you don't have your like a separate refill ability to change the volume on the fly, just use your gain levels. So I just got to a point, as I said before, that it's detectable but doesn't pull the music back. And yeah, it gives when I mute these G and H channels on and off, I can definitely tell that the effect is working. So guys, that brings us to the end of this tutorial. Once again, I hope you found it interesting. If you've got any questions, please shout out. I'm happy to answer those. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next episode.